dig the new music. Hello and welcome to another edition of Here We Are. I'm your host, TONITA, and in this edition, along with that exciting new music, we're going to be talking about the business of publishing. And joining me in this discussion is Mr. David Driver, and he is the founder and CEO of Noble Press, which is an African-American publishing company located in Chicago. Thank you, Mr. Driver, for coming to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, did you like that?
I love it. I was getting down.
He was doing like this. Hey, make the guests comfortable. Make them comfortable. How was the idea to own a publishing company created? Where did that originate from?
Well, it originated from, I just really wanted to read more books with my own experiences in them, you know, and not just books that had black folks in them, and those were hard to find too back when we started, but also books that sort of talked about the middle class black experience. You know, the publishers, a lot of the white publishers, they had a certain mindset in terms of who black people were and how we lived and stuff, you know, and so they would much rather do a book that talked about gang life than talked about the difficulties of being a black business person or being a black who's trying to make his way through corporate America. So
because we do more than gang bang, right?
Oh yes,
yeah, okay.
Yes. I mean, they're a small percentage of the black population.
Okay.
So, but you wouldn't believe it from reading the newspaper. But so I wanted, you know, I was looking for something like that, and I had quit my previous job, and I was sort of restless. You know, what am I going to do now with myself? And this just sort of came up. I mean, I've always been a big fan of books. When I was a kid, the most valuable thing to me was my library card. I mean, I love that thing.
Now, I find it very interesting. You read a lot of books, so that means you're very informed. And generally, I'm sorry, I hate to stereotype, but generally, people that are bookworms, I mean, you have a very vibrant type personality, and people that are bookworms, they're very kind of like, you know, reserved and kind of conservative stuff. And you know what I'm talking about. Don't let me sit down here and do that. You know what I'm talking about.
Well, I don't know anybody like that in publishing. I mean, it's some wild people that I met in that business.
Okay, so that just blows that whole stereotype.
You know, I went to the Black Librarians Convention, and I had that same thought. Okay, I was driving up to Milwaukee, and I said, oh, I'm going to spend 2 days with librarians. We had a great time. Matter of fact, they had some type of black fair going on, you know, in the Summerfest grounds. We all went over there. I mean, you know, got down. It's really nice.
Okay, so okay. Don't go off on a tangent now. We got to get back to publishing here. Okay, so that just blows that whole stereotype out the water. Okay, but how successful is Noble Publishing?
We're very successful. We're our sales are growing about 100% a year. I mean, it's really been amazing. We just launched the Black Literary Society, and we literally expect to sell $500,000 of books right through that new Black Book Club. I mean, the black folks who've joined us and joined the book club, I mean, it's really the rate of people are joining like crazy. I mean, we put the catalogs out there, and the phone's been ringing off the hook. You know, I want that book, I want that book, and stuff. So it's doing really, really well. Okay,
and we will talk about the BLS in a moment, but how many books a year do you publish on average?
We do on average 12 books a year.
Average of 12 books a year.
Right, and we've been trying to, every year we go up 25%, so next year we'll do 14, next year we'll do 16 after that.
Now, what role does a publisher play in getting a book published?
Well, the first thing we have to do is decide which book is going to get published. That's the most important decision we make. And we're sitting there and we're trying to think, what is it that our audience wants to read? So it's, you know, obviously a guess. We talk to people, we go to the bookstores, we look at what's doing well and what's not doing well and try to figure out why. And we try to bring all that information back and try to apply that to the projects that are being submitted to us. We get about 5,000 submissions. It could be a full manuscript to someone sending in a letter and some sample chapters who want their book published. And so we have to go through the stuff and try to determine what it is that we should be, you know, publishing and making.
Now, do you have any of your books published in different languages?
Yes. It's interesting. Chinese, for instance. The Chinese have bought 3 of our books and have translated them into Chinese. French, German. One of the things we want to work on is and actually I'm going to Zimbabwe because they're having the African Publishers Association.
You're going to Zimbabwe?
Yeah, in September. Yes, yes, it's great. You know, but there is really, what we want to do is work with another press called Africa World Press and try to figure out, there's really no way of importing, you know, African American books directly into Africa. We have to go through London because, you know, neo-colonialism is still going on. You know?
Okay.
So what we want to do is go sit down with some of the publishers there, talk to them about, you know, taking some of our books, translating them into their native tongue. Also talk to some of them about looking at some of their materials and then buying the rights to sell some of their materials in the U.S.
So, now, you keep saying we look over 5,000 manuscripts. We do.
Oh,
How many is we?
That's only 6 of us.
And y'all go through all those books?
Yeah.
Well,
some of
it.
Well, you know what? I mean, let me just say something. Some of it is so bad that all you gotta do is open. You open the envelope, and you look, you say, "Oh my God!" You know, it's just, I don't know. I mean, people who sing in the shower probably don't record a videotape and send it to Sony and expect to get recorded, right? But I don't know. There's a lot of people who've never taken any writing classes, who've never went to a writer's workshop, and a lot of people don't read a lot of books, but they think their life is interesting and somebody ought to publish it. You know, but you have to learn to write. The most important thing about being an author is that you have good writing skills. You know, so a lot of it's very easy. You read the first page and you know that this is not a candidate for publication.
So, like, what you gonna do with mine when I send mine over there?
We're gonna read it.
Yeah. Of course, he'd say that now. I'll keep you updated.
We'll read. Now, a lot of times, if it's really bad and they have a self-stamped return envelope, we'll just put a little letter, the standard letter, send it back. But a lot of times, what the person needs is some direction and encouragement. So we will say, interesting story, but there are some problems, and we will tell them what those problems are. And if they, you know, really want to get their manuscript published with us or any place else, then they will go through the process of fixing it. You know, I mean, it's a lot of times it's just basic stuff, you know, basic, you know, literature stuff. I don't want to get into details of what goes wrong with this stuff, but a lot of times it's like they had one lady. She wrote a great, interesting book, but it was like all dialogue. And I asked her, I said, you know, when I was reading this, I wanted to know one thing: what did the characters look like? The house that they were in, what was the house like? You know, I told her it was like a painting where she had the two characters in the middle with no background.
It was just blank.
Just blank. I said, now you need to go and paint a background, you know, because I want to know. When I read a book, I want to visualize what I'm saying.
Okay. And the form letter that you send, I'm sure it's very appropriate.
It's very nice.
Very appropriate.
It's very nice, but it's like...
you tell them I'm not going to publish your book, but no. But.
Well, we have to say no. I mean, like I said, out of 5,000, we take 10. So we say no. It's much easier to say no. You know, and then we also have literary agents who are bringing in more high-profile projects. Those tend to be expensive, but they also tend to be well done. So that the question there is not necessarily whether the person can write or whether it's going to be written well. The question there is whether we can afford it and whether we will get our return back by. We got to do everything. We have to edit the book, we have to design the book, we have to pay for the book to be printed. Then we have to do. We have to have our sales reps to go to all the bookstores, get them in the books, and get the books in the store, and then we got to do publicity. So then we have to like pay for the author to go around from city to city, do shows like this, you know, do radio, and promote and talk about the book. You know, so we invest a lot of time and a lot of money in each project. So we want to make sure that it's going to work.
Okay, we'll be right back with Mr. Driver after this. Stay tuned. Welcome back. This is Here We Are, and I'm T.R. Mugabe. And I'm here talking with my very animated guest, Mr. David Driver of Noble Publishing in Chicago. And our subject is publishing. And we're still kind of like slamming on the music here, so but you have to excuse us. But what are some of the book titles that you've published?
Okay.
That stick out?
Our best-selling books are Black and Single, which is basically a dating guide for black singles.
Because there are a lot of black singles.
That's right. Volunteer Slavery, which was a book about a woman reporter working at the Washington Post, and it's really about the insensitivity of the mainstream media to the needs of African Americans and other cultures. Urban Romance, which is by Nelson George, who's written quite a few books, 8 books, and it's his first novel, and it's really funny because it's a love story about a guy who's from Brooklyn who's a rap music critic, and he falls in love with this woman from Connecticut who's a black Republican, you know, it's like from Yale, and it's like a bizarre story. And we have a book that was set here in Chicago called The Doctor, the Murder, the Mystery, and won a couple of awards, the Agatha Christie Best Nonfiction Award and the Buchanan World Convention Best True Crime Award. It was about Dr. Branyan. It was a 1967 story. It's actually sort of similar to O.J. in terms of a prominent black man's wife was found murdered. And there was no evidence or anything. I mean, it's just circumstantial evidence. But they arrested him, put him before an all-white jury, and convicted him. And then, so after all the appeals were over, and he knew he was innocent, he decided, you know, I'm not going to take this. So he goes to Africa, and he lives in Africa for 13 years, and he's like running around. They're chasing him around. So he's going from country to country.
To country. Now, see, now the book sales for that book right there is going to shoot up. Now that you've compared it to the, see, you just stepped in it now. Now, have you ever rejected a book that has gone on to be successful? You know, after you send that cute little form letter, that's not it. Has it ever just gone on to be successful?
We've never, let me say this, it's happened a lot in publishing. For instance, Voluntary Slavery was our biggest book ever, and we probably generated well over $500,000 from the book. But 32 publishers said no to it. We're the 33 publisher.
Now, see, I didn't ask. Have other publishers send you books?
Okay.
I said,
no.
But no, go ahead.
No,
go
okay,
ahead.
but no, I can't. No book that we've ever rejected at this point in our life has ever like showed up to be, you know, a big book.
Okay, now you can tell us about the success story of.
No, I'm saying what I was
saying.
Well, we're too young. We're only 6 years old.
Okay, yeah.
We're only 6 years old. There's a book out called I think Man-Child or something. It's a book about black men that we actually wanted, but we just were too stingy. In other words, the offer we made for the book was too small, and then one of the major publishers bought it, and it's a bestseller now. So I mean, that's the same thing. I mean, if I wasn't so tight-fisted with the money, then maybe I could have like acquired the book, and we would have had another bestseller on our hands. But we have to be careful. We're not Random House and Simon & Schuster, so we can't go around throwing big money around.
Big money around and everything.
But no, it happens all the time. Matter of fact, Black and Single, which is our best-selling book ever. The book was floating around New York City for 3 years. The gentleman who wrote it is a prominent PhD here at Washington University, St. Louis. He's got a PhD in psychology and sociology, but nobody wanted to do a black dating guide.
So like when this guy reads you, you are read.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, you're definitely read. So, you know, it happens all the time. And it happens even more in terms of dealing with books that are outside your normal experience. Because if New York publishing is very few African Americans in any decision-making positions. So they're basically white editors deciding which African American book to do, which Hispanic book to do, whatever. And so, you know, they don't really know. I mean, they're not hanging out with us, you know. So they may not. The only way that they knew that black relationship books were hot was when Black and Single starts showing up on lists. Now, the same book that they all rejected 2 years ago, they were running around, and now there's 7 black relationship books coming out from major publishers. You know, so they don't, you know what I mean? You can't be a trendsetter if you don't understand what's going on, but they definitely follow the lead. Everyone's looking for the next Terry McMillan. So if you're a black woman and you're writing relationship-based novels, you can get published. If you're a black man, they don't want to talk to you. You know what I mean? Because no one has shown yet that you can be a black man, write a novel, and sell, you know, $5 million worth of copies like Terry McMillan. So, but somebody will soon.
I don't doubt it. We have a lot of talent in our black community.
Yeah, that's right.
But how do you go about selecting books to be published?
Well, remember that pile I told you about, all that stuff coming in? Okay, we get rid of the obvious stuff, the stuff that's, you know, not related to what we're trying to do. the stuff that's, the religious, we get a lot of religious stuff because our name is Noble Press. We send a lot of that stuff to Winston Derrick, which is a black religious publisher down in North Carolina, because they do religious book. We get a lot of just stuff that's, just not, appropriate. So that's easy. Then we have to start going through the stuff again and say, okay, does anybody care about this subject matter that someone's trying to write about? Is it well done? How much help is this author going to need to finish the book? We start asking ourselves a lot of questions. Once you make the 5th cut, then we start getting other people involved outside, people in the review media that we know, people at bookstores that we know. We might send them some sample chapters and say, what do you think of this? My sister's very good. I call my sister and say, what do you think of this idea? Would you buy this? And then basically you just try to find out. You work your network and you find out, does anybody care? You look for similar books, if there are any, and find out what their sales performance was, what the reviewers said, that type of thing. Yeah.
Okay. Now, your background is in business. And why did you decide to go into publishing as opposed to maybe a restaurant business or a car dealership or any other business?
Well, it's sort of a humorous story, but I was an investment banker for 13 years, and I had saved up some money, and I said, I really don't have to take this anymore. I'm out of here, okay? And so at the time, I was going to play golf, play tennis, and go sailing. That's what I had planned on doing. But I always was a closet writer. Okay, and I actually wrote this book about volunteering because I was doing a lot of volunteer work. So I wrote a book called The Good Heart Book, A Guide to Volunteering. And I was telling my friends, well, the reason I was writing was because I didn't want them to say that I was a bum because I didn't have a job and I wasn't doing anything. So I'm not a bum, I'm a writer. But anyway, so that book sort of introduced me to the world of publishing, and I found it extremely fascinating. And it just got in my blood, I just wanted to do, I've always loved books, and I just saw there was a real opportunity. I mean, I think for a lot of black folks out there who are thinking about going into business, there's a lot of opportunity in stereotypes. In other words, if someone says to you, black folks don't read, then you got to go start making books, because a lot of people are believing that there's probably not a lot of books being made for black folks. Same thing for Hispanics. If you don't believe they buy books, then you're not going to commit any capital to make books for them. But in reality, you got a lot of black folks out there who are like, God, I wish I had a book to read that reflected my reality. It is black books right now are it's the fastest growing segment in publishing. It's a small segment, but it's growing fast. I mean, it's growing fast. The average black first novel. You had like a woman named Connie Briscoe came out with a book, first novel, sold 60,000 copies. You had, all these first-time people you never heard of, you write books, and they sell like 100,000 copies. The average general audience first novel sells like 1,000 copies, So, I mean, it's just the demand by African Americans for reading material is great.
Now, see, I'm going to send you my... You said that, and I'm going to send you my stuff, okay? And I want to make the cut now. I don't want to make the okay, if you're going to cut me, make it a good cut. Make it like in the 4th cut. You know what I'm saying? Don't, count me out. But what do you find most enjoyable about being a publisher?
Well, let's see, it's not when I sweep up the floors. No, you do.
But when you own stuff, you wear a lot of hats now.
Hey, you do everything. I mean, it's like I'm in charge, and don't ask anybody to do anything you wouldn't do. I think the thing that I enjoy most is working with authors. I really enjoy the whole thing of reading their stuff and discussing it with them and strategizing. A woman's writing this book about this relationship that went awry, and she wanted to, a lot of authors always want to start at, I was a baby and then I grew up, you know what I mean, in chronological order. And I said, why don't you start it at the wedding? Start at the wedding, and let's describe this huge wedding. There's 600 people, and it's sort of this fairy tale coming true, and then set up the nightmare from there.
Look, I want you to hold that thought because I want you to be able to get all of. We're going to take a commercial. Okay. We'll be right back with Mr. Driver right after this. Stay tuned. Welcome back. We're talking today with Mr. David. Oh gosh, I see everybody's messing up. Mr. David Driver, and he was explaining to us his most enjoyable part of his job. Go ahead.
Okay.
I didn't mean to chop it up like that. I'm sorry.
No,
see,
no,
I
that's
made
fine. That's
okay,
fine.
I'm trying to make it look good now, David. Go
Okay,
ahead.
thank you. No, basically, you know, a book is like anything else. I mean, if you have a story, you can tell it a million different ways. And see, what people don't understand, that's part of the writing process. Part of the writing process is figuring out the best way of telling the story. And I mean, where do I start it? Where do I end it? What do I do in the middle? You know, and there's many ways you can do it. So that's sort of the big picture, like, you know, how do I start this story? I mean, another example is a woman who was writing a book about, she's a black woman, grew up in an all-white environment. And so she wanted to get some black culture, right? So when it came time to go to college, she said to her parents, I want to go to Howard, I want to go to black school. Okay. But she hadn't been around a lot of black folks before. So now she's like, you know, she's at Howard, right? And it was funny because, of course, you know, her two roommates disliked her immediately, okay? Because she had a lot of mannerisms and stuff that they just didn't appreciate. And I just thought, you know, so she started the story at home with her parents packing up the car to drive her to Howard. And I was like reading this. Why don't you just start at Howard? You know, I mean, there's nothing interesting going on here. Just started right at Howard when you meet your first roommates.
It all started when I walked in the door.
Yeah, you walked in the door. And so I'm wondering, well, okay, this woman walks in the door and meets these two black women, and they immediately hate her. Like, what is it about this woman, you know, that does that, you know? Because it was really a reverse play on discrimination, because she felt that in the environment she lived in, you know, the first thing people saw was that she was a black woman. Okay. Well, when the black folks saw her, the first thing they saw was she was a black woman with a lot of strange mannerisms. You know. So, but you know, you could do so much with the story just by basic construction techniques. You know.
Now, I cut you off before the break. Now, you were talking about a
wedding. It's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
The woman wanted to start a story. It was a story about a fairy tale romance. A black woman marries this big celebrity, and he turns out to be, you know, not as nice as she thought. Let me just say that. So she wanted to start the story with when she met him, and you know, the dating process. And you know, it was like boring. You know, nothing was happening. You know, it's like it's like a movie. You know, if you're writing a book, you ought to watch movies and watch them from a different point of view. Look at the scenes and try to figure out why that scene went before that scene and that scene went before that one. You know, we're talking about fiction novels now, but I mean, it's all structure, construction. So I said, start the book at the wedding. You know, something's happening. And then you can always flash back. There's various techniques where you can go back and say, when I was a little girl, everybody wants to put their childhood in there. You know, when I was a little girl, you know, you can always flash back to that. But you want to start, you don't want to lose your reader on the first page.
Yeah, I understand. Now, on the flip side of that, what is it about publishing that you don't like?
There's a lot of things. No, actually,
okay, well, don't air your dirty laundry. Just give us a pretty, you know, generic.
Well, let's see. It's the worst part about any business, especially when you're a small business, is you know, trying to collect what's owed you. I mean, it's sort of like we're selling to a lot of different entities, and you know, some people you ship them, you bill them, they pay immediately. Some people pay in 30 days, some people pay in 60 days. Some people don't pay unless you come visit them. Okay, so you know, that's the thing I hate. I mean, it's sort of like if everything worked the way it was supposed to work, it would be very easy, it would always be fun. But there's always, you know, situations and we have our own cash flow considerations, and then I got to go chasing somebody to get my money from them, you know what I mean? So that's what I hate.
Well, I wouldn't want to actually go into detail about one of your knocking on the door type experiences, because that would be a totally different talk show.
Right.
Okay, so we're not going to go there. But what is it about Noble Press that sets it apart from other publishing companies?
Well, I think, well, first of all, let me say that there are about 12 to 14 established black publishing companies in the country. And so the 14 of us are set aside from the general publishers because we're all black owned. We all tend to focus on stuff having to do with African Americans. Now, out of those 14 publishing companies, each of us have our thing. I mentioned Winston Derrick. They do black religious books. There's a company called Just Us and another company called Black Butterfly who do black children's books. You have here in Chicago, for instance, you got Third World Press, African American Image, who tend to be more Afrocentric orientated than us. They jokingly refer to me as the Buppy Press, okay? Because we tend to focus, we see our audience as sort of middle-class black folks who, you know, tend to be more corporate-minded and that type of thing. So we have a lot of the people in our nonfiction books tend to be people who are working in various aspects of corporate America and stuff like that, and the struggles they face in that, you know, in that field. So, you know, that sort of sets us aside. They call us the Buppy Press. For lack of a better word.
Okay. Well, hey, that's what they feel. That's what, yeah, I have nothing to say about it. Well, with the growing market in electronic media, do you feel that reading is a dying art?
I think in certain segments of the book world, books may become obsolete.
Okay,
and it makes sense. For instance, encyclopedias, in terms of reference books, I mean, if I want to go to a book for the sole purpose of finding information, then I'd much rather go to a CD-ROM tape and throw it in, punch a button, get right to where I want, and then be able to go off and punch another button and get the additional details I need. I mean, it's much more effective, it's much more visual, and I think in terms of that, and in terms of the related books, which are text books, I think it's possible you're going to see some significant changes in those markets in terms of less books and more computer stuff. In terms of the idea of someone reading a novel on a portable computer, no. I've read some articles where people think that's going to happen. But, you know, reading is I read for the pleasure of reading, you know. I read for the joy of reading. You know, I think if I had to read a book on a computer screen, I'd go blind, you know what I mean? It's just not the same experience. The real question mark is nonfiction books. It's a pretty broad area, but for instance, biographies. You know, Barry Gordy's biography is out now. I want to know about Barry Gordy. I loved Motown. I mean, I grew up on Motown. I'm not going to read that on a computer screen. Now, I think one of the areas that will have an impact on that stuff is the audio books. Okay. For instance, Susan Taylor has a book out, in the Spirit. It's an inspirational book. It's sort of an uplifting book. Perfect book to be on audio tape. Okay, in your car, you pump that tape in, and you hear Susan's voice telling you to hang in there and, you know, be strong. You know, that's, I think, her books. Some people would rather buy the tape than buy the book. You know, so there are different areas. You have to be real careful. The thing that I do as a publisher is, as long as I own the rights, that I'm okay. In other words, whether it's a book form, whether it's audio, whether it's CD-ROM, or whether it's video, as long as I own the rights to the project, then however it goes, I will get my investment back.
So, as with anything, there are pluses and minuses, but you're saying that they pretty much weigh out?
I think they weigh out if you're a smart business person. There are some old-timers who just believe that you know, books will never be replaced by anything, and I'm saying that's true, but certain books, every book has a purpose, and that, like, if the purpose can be better accomplished by a computer program to find information, for instance, or if I'm a doctor, instead of buying all these medical texts, I can just add a computer and punch up and find what I need. You know, why bother with the book? So I think you just have to be smart, understand why people do what they do, and then adjust accordingly.
Now, how is value placed on a book?
Well, it's a very competitive market. You go in a bookstore and there's, you talking about actually individual book or?
Yeah, any book. Like I bring this book to you. I bring my book, for instance.
Okay, right, okay. Oh, the $1 Million Advance.
The $1 Million Advance book. You know,
the new Gingrich at $4.5 million. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
but how do you place, you know, a value on that without embarrassing me? But how do you place value on books?
Well, it's like any business thing. You have to work your way backwards. In other words, let's use Newt Gingrich, for example.
Okay, you can use mine, but
Newt comes in and they want him to do 2 books. How they figured out that he should get $4.5 million, I never know. But anyway, so there's obviously something going on there that we don't know about. But
he didn't come to you, though?
No, no,
okay.
no. I didn't have any problems with the FDA or whatever FCC that I needed to take care of. But anyway, you kind of work your way backwards. In other words, you bring me your book, and I believe that if I do your book right and I market your book right, I can sell 20,000 copies, and I'm going to get the book's $20. So I'll get $10. I'll take in $200,000 total on your book. Okay, and I figured that I started working my way backwards. My costs are blah blah blah. And the royalty is typically something like 15% of the retail price, or let's say your royalty is 20% of what I get. All right, so that means that I'm going to have to pay you $40,000 to $50,000 of the money that I take in. Okay, so I don't want to give you an advance of over $50,000. Okay, what I'm saying is you're going to earn as an author $50,000 anyway. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'd be willing to pay you up front as much as $50,000 for the rights to the book.
Okay.
Now that's in a world if I was guaranteed that I could sell 20,000 copies. Okay. Which is a lot.
Now you have to excuse my ignorance if this seems like a silly question, but I'm saying, like, I go in the store and I see a book that costs $23.95. Right. Okay, and I say, man, that's steep. You know, how did they get to that price?
Okay. Well, it's a lot of factors in there. One is competition. In other words, that's where all the books are going for. So if Random House is selling theirs for 27, you know, and I have a book that has other books like it out there, I might put it out there at 24. If I have a book that nobody has anything like, I might put it out there at 20, 26, 27. But there are a lot of costs. I mean, basically what people need to know is publishing is a very low margin business. When you get done with taking out the printing, the cost of printing a book, the cost of promoting a book, the cost of paying the author, we get rid of all those costs. There's not a lot there. So what's been happening in the last 2 years is paper prices have literally doubled. I mean, last year the price of paper went up 50%. I mean, that just doesn't happen. So publishers are getting squeezed because now a book that I could have printed for $2 a book now costs me $2.50 to produce. Okay, and so I've got to get that 50 cents back. I've got to bump up the price at the bookstore by like almost $3. Mm-hmm. You know, so that's what you see. Books are actually, in my opinion, too cheap. Not in terms of the consumer, but in terms of what the publisher has left. You know.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something, you know, in regards to the knowledge you get from.
Oh no. I'm just saying from a businessman's point of view. You know, our business would be healthier if we had higher margins as an industry. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of us are struggling. You know, I mean, we may be selling stuff, but we're not keeping anything. So, you know, one of the ideas of why don't we raise book prices? Well, it's not that easy because you know, consumers really don't want to pay $20 for a book. Mm-hmm. You know, and then you have to look at competing projects. You know, what are videotapes going for? You know what I mean?
I'm guilty. But we'll be back with more Here We Are and Mr. David Driver right after this. Stay tuned. Hi and welcome back. This is Here We Are, and I'm Tia Mugabe, and our guest today is Mr. David Driver, who is publisher and owner of Noble Press in Chicago. Is a book value set before publishing or after a PR campaign?
Everything's done way before it's published. Mm-hmm. What we do is the book is probably priced a year before it comes out, and that price can change. The title is you know, thought of. We sit up there and what should we call this? Okay, and all that stuff. Matter of fact, the book is actually sold to the bookstore 6 months before it's even made. The salespeople go around twice a year. They go knocking, hey, you know, this is what Noble Press is putting out for, you know, this fall season, and, you know, we want you to buy 5 of those, 2 of these, that type of thing. So we have those orders in advance. So all of that stuff is done. So, and since we've already sold the book, we really can't play with the price too much because people are already expecting, you know, a $20 book. We can't send them a $30 book, you know. So everything is done early. Now, what does change after the book comes out and after the promotion campaign is the value of the other rights of the book. In other words, when you write a book as an author, you've basically produced a raw material that can be shaped in many different ways. It can be made into a movie. It can be made into a television program. It can be made into an audio tape. It can be made into a hardcover book, a paperback book, you know, or a cheap $5.99 book you find at the supermarket. So these are all these rights, and our job as a publisher is to try to maximize your value of those rights. And we're a partner now because we bought in. So when the book starts to do well in one form, then I can go to Random House and say, hey, look, you know, I've sold 20,000 copies of this book in hardcover. Would you like to buy the paperback rights, which would be the right to remake the book, let's say a year later, in paperback form. And before the book came out, they might have said to me, no, I'm not interested. Nobody cares about that, you know. And then now that I'm getting all this attention, yeah, well, maybe we were wrong. Okay, we'll offer you, you know, $50,000 or something. So the rights are, you know, the thing that who basic value fluctuate a lot. And a lot of times you have the movie houses coming in, like, look, well, we want to buy an option on that story, and you know, so it all fluctuates. And it depends on how much immediate attention you can get for the author. That's very important because everybody thinks, you know, the more media they see, the more copies of the book they think they can sell, so they're willing to pay more for it.
Okay.
That's a media game, really.
Now, what are the books of choice nowadays that the African American community seems to be reading more of?
Well, the things that seem to be hitting the bestseller list, we have a number of black bestseller lists. One is various affirmation books, sort of spiritual-based books that talk about, you know, encouraging things, you know. Those daily type books, you know, you read a meditation a day. All of those, a lot of those out there doing very, very well. What I call relationship-based novels tend to do very well with a lot of black women and some black men. And they're not romance books. They're deeper than that, but they're novels, and the central theme has to do with the relationships, either between two people or a group of women and the different guys that they date. There's a very strong market for these, what do you want to call them, just corporate novels. I mean, corporate nonfiction stories, I'm sorry. Volunteer slavery was the first. You remember I talked about being, you know, how they can't come up with anything, but they see something work, they start doing it. So remember everybody rejected volunteer slavery, we did it, and then it became real successful. 2 years later, there's about 5 other books like it coming out from major publishers. One did very well. Nathan McCall's Makes Me Want to Holler.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. That was a similar book in that it was actually another black person working the Washington Post. Then another publisher came out with another black person working at the Washington Post, talking about, there was a woman, Patricia Gaines. All of the books were very similar. They centered around this person's career in terms of being a black journalist. But they also give a lot of attention to their childhood and how they got from here to there. Those have done very well. The biographies, of course, always do well. The Berry Gordy's out, and who else? Oh, Mandela, that's like, everyone must read that book. So, you know, there's a lot of different areas. There's some health books now. You know, African-American health books, Body and Soul is one, African-American Health Guide is another. Just a lot of different things. I mean, it's so, you know, black folks want stuff for them, you know.
Now, it's interesting that you said that because that would lead me to raise this question. Now, we're talking about in the area of the African-American market, and I know, well, I can assume that you compare it to like the other markets that are out there, and their wants are different. Do you know
yeah, very much so.
Very diverse? Yeah.
Very much so.
Now, what do you consider as A-list reading?
Oh, what I read? Oh, all the books in the Black Literary Society.
Let's talk about the BLS. Now that you've mentioned
I picked those books accordingly.
Okay, but let's talk about the Black Literary Society.
Okay. That is something we just started actually last month, and it's a book club for black folks. And what we do is we go around to all the black publishers and the white publishers, and we try to get their best books, and we put them in the book club. So there's 70.
Now that's what you're going to put my book in when I.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And you know, we basically, you know, give it to folks, and and basically, you know, the membership is free. You just, you know, order anything you want, and then you get, you know, we get discounts at bookstores, a lot of extra stuff, autographed copies of books. But what it does is, for a lot of people who getting to a African American bookstore, if it's not convenient, this allows you to kind of shop at home and to see, you know, all the wonderful things that black writers are doing. You know, we get
kind of like Columbia House in the home, right?
Oh, exactly, exactly.
Okay. Like, what is Paul Lawrence Dunbar is in the society, you know, as they
Yes.
say in the house. Okay.
Yes, he's
See,
in
now
the
that may be something you need to bring to the table now. See?
Yes, yeah.
See, all kinds of stuff we come up with here on Here We Are. Now, when the author brings you a book and they want you to publish it, how much input do they have in seeing that book published? How much, you know, how much do they interact with you all? Because what I'm getting from you, you said you work on the public relations, you work on the cover, you work on the sending them to different places. Stuff. How, you know?
Well, once we decide that we're partners in it, I mean, it's basically a partnership. You know, we're putting up money, and they're putting up their sweat and their skill, okay, and their experience, whatever it is, okay. And we're putting up our expertise and our distribution network and our publicity contest. We are coming in this together. Now, most of the work that we do comes at the beginning and the end. Most of the work is really on making the book the best book we can. I mean, there's no writer in the country who cannot benefit from having someone go over his work or her work, you know. So a good editor is absolutely essential. Matter of fact, you should see stuff what it looks like. Some of the best writers, you should see what their stuff looks like before the editors get done. You know, somebody said no.
So they take all the credit, huh?
Well, yeah, that's fine. The publishing is a background business. We're the background business. Because as I was going to say, at the end, when it comes time to sell the book, our publicists will put together the tour, but the author has to sell it. The author is the one who's got to do what I'm doing right now.
Has to have the charisma.
Yeah, he has to get on the talk shows. She has to go out and go do the book signings. People buying a book is a very personal thing. It's really a relationship between the writer and the book buyer. I mean, it's interesting. You can get somebody on Oprah, but and Oprah show is powerful in terms of selling books. But if that person gets on there and makes a fool of themselves, the people are not going. If they don't like the author, they're not going to buy the book. You know, so the author is the one who's got to be out there, you know, smiling, doing all the shows. It's a grueling work because we do it like we'll do in 10 days we'll have the author in 6 cities. You know, 6 cities. You get up there. It's a book tour. That's what it's like. It's not glamorous at all. You know. Then we might let them sleep. No,
I'm still going to send you my. You trying to make it look bad, but I'm still no.
No, I mean, it's what has to be done to sell a book. But you know, we basically, you know, they go to New York, they go to Philadelphia, they go to Washington D.C. Then you know what I mean. You do it at once, get it over with. Do it while the media's hot.
Get it out your system. Okay, we'll be right back with David Driver after this break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. This is Here We Are, and today we're talking about publishing. And our guest is Mr. David Driver of Noble Publishing Company in Chicago. I know I've said that like a lot of times and stuff, but you know, I like you, Dave.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, are there any subjects or writers that you just will not publish?
Yeah, we don't do, you know, we don't do, I was trying to think of this guy who did these murder books. Can't think of it. Not really. I mean, we tend to do books that fit the distribution system we have, and so one of the reasons we don't do religious books is because we really don't have a system to get them into religious bookstores. That'd be a whole new business we'd have to start up, you know, because the religious bookstore is a whole separate thing. We don't do. We try not to do too many autobiographies. because they tend to be very difficult to sell if a person's not a celebrity. So unless they have something very interesting to say, we were talking about this earlier, unless they have something very interesting to say, but more importantly, unless they write superbly, the chances of the book being successful are very, very slim. We don't do art books because of the technology and the expertise needed to do those, versus doing, you know, just regular straight textbooks like we did. So basically art books are done by art publishers and, regular publishers do. So I mean, you know, it's not that we not interested in stuff, it's just that we have to look at we make our decisions based on our expertise, the systems we have in-house, and how we sell our books.
Now, do you publish any children's books?
No, I was going to say that too, because children's books tend to be very visual. They tend to have a lot of art, illustrations in them. They tend to be for color. Okay.
Well, I'm going to ask this anyway, for the benefit of teachers that are always looking for some place to have, you know, field trips for and things of that nature. I mean, do you offer things like that? You don't know, allow kids to come in?
What we've done is, we don't have, I mean, we could get into that, and we always talk about what we're going to do next, but what we've done is we've included a lot of children's books in the Black Literary Society. So we know who the black children's publishers are. We know which major publishers are producing books for African American children. So we basically purchase books from them, put them in the society, and we sell them to individuals. We sell them to schools, stuff like that. So, you know, like I said, there are two black children's publishers, Just Us in Baltimore, I believe they are, and Black Butterfly in New York City. You know, and so they're doing a wonderful job at producing children's books. So we don't feel we have to do it. but they couldn't do what we were doing. You know what I mean? Their expertise is different. Their books, our books are a lot of words, text, which requires a certain type of editing. Their books are primarily pictures. You know. So
it's something of a different capacity.
Right.
Now, you've written 2 books. You talked about one. And the other one?
Oh, right, yeah. Right before the great Republican right-wing takeover, I wrote a book called Defending the Left. It's sort of about why liberal and left of liberal politics are so great. I don't want to talk about it.
Well, no, I just, you know, I know you see this look on my face, and you're like, why should me like that? Because I'm telling you, we talked about it at the beginning of time, and I know it's a stereotype, but, you know, most people that are bookworms, I mean, the thick glasses, the pencils in the pocket.
Oh, my God, you have, what?
I'm sorry.
You know, I have a different impression. I have an impression of some person in a fine tweed suit with a bow tie and a pipe.
Oh, God,
I've been wondering, should I get a pipe?
either.
Do you think I should get a pipe? No, you know, basically I write what my interests are, and you know, over the years, different things have motivated me to take the time to write a book. It's tedious. The type of books I tend to write tend to require a lot of research. So I spend a lot of time in the library, you know, trying to get the facts and figures on the stuff so I can back up my arguments. Writing of the book is a nonfiction book. It's like conducting a debate, okay? And so I have this argument. I want to convince you of this argument. So what I have to have is, here's my premise, you know, that conservatives are full of it, okay? And so then here's all the reasons why I believe that. And so you know, you have to create the argument, and you know, you have to go back. So you got to have all the ammunition. So you know, you got to find out which prominent experts are, you know, saying the same thing, you know, to get, you know, ammunition and stuff. It's really a pain in the butt, right? I really admire the authors because you know, I can only do it every like 3 years.
Every 3 years. And see, that was another question I was going to ask. I know that writing is tedious.
Right.
You know, I've never written a book. It's something I would like to do, as I've very well expressed on this show. But what are the guidelines? What steps do you follow, or advice do you give others when they say, I want to write a book? What advice do you give them when putting a book together?
Well, the first thing, before they even get to that, okay, my first thing was, if you're going to write a book, you want to read a book a week, okay? I mean, you really want to start reading, because everything has been done before. All the techniques, everything's done. You know, you need to learn, you know, what other people have done that has been successful. Okay, learn how it's done. Take some writing classes, get some books, go to a workshop, learn how to write. Just don't sit down and start writing. I think people really underestimate the art and the expertise of writing. I mean, you know, you read a lot of writers. You read Maya Angelou, you read Toni Morrison. I mean, it's like reading. I mean, it's art. You know, it's not just something you can sit down and do. Not that you want to be that good, but I mean, it's just take it seriously. It's not just something you just sit down and decide to do, and then a masterpiece comes out of it.
Because it's different than writing for a magazine or for a newspaper. This is something that you have to put, you have to put a lot more of yourself into it when you're doing it.
Right. But even writing for, I mean, most people couldn't write for a magazine.
They can write a book, but they can't write for a magazine? Or you just say most people,
I mean, most people
can't get that far?
Right. I mean, because it requires a certain knowledge.
And a discipline, too.
And discipline. But a certain knowledge of techniques to write for a magazine. Okay. So, because if you can write long articles for a magazine, you can write a book. Because a long article for a magazine is like a half a chapter. And I always tell people, take it by sections. You know, let's say, don't look at it as the whole book. Just look at, you got to write one chapter at a time. You know, and so you get one chapter done, take a break, then you do the next chapter. You know, because let's say there's 10, 12 chapters in the book.
Okay, now, are there any other books you have in the works?
Oh, we got a lot of books.
No, I'm saying you personally.
Oh, I have, yes. I've probably got 4 books started. Okay, one is a humor book called Black Folks Guide to, African American Guide to Understanding White Folks. This is my humor book. I've got, I want to do a book on black economics. I mean, I just look at, you know, the unemployment rate among black males, and you know, corporate America has been downsizing for the last 20 years. The government's downsizing. It doesn't look like there's going to be any change. So, you know, I hate to sound like a black Republican, but I mean, it seems to me that, you know, we're going to really have to have some growing black businesses. That's the only way these unemployment problems are going to get addressed. I mean, we can't depend on somebody else to do it. So I've been thinking about that and talking to some of my economic buddies about how to do that.
And you have some other books in the works too. You know, David, I've enjoyed doing this show. We have to cut short because we're about to go to our book segment. But I want to thank you for coming on the program, and I want you to know that it's on record that you will look over my reading, and not only that, you will not cut me in the first cut. I just want you to know that. And they're very strong about that. But thank you for coming to the program. You know, it is now that time in our program where we recommend a book to read, and the book that we recommend this time is The Black Poets by Dudley Randall. Now, published in 1971, this book is an anthology of African-American poetry. From black folk poetry to freedom hymns, this book presents the sentiment of African-Americans from slavery to the civil rights movement through colorful prose. There are entries by over 30 writers in this book, such as Robert Hayden, James Weldon Johnson, Langston Hughes, Paul Lomas Dunbar, just to name a few. While this book is enjoyable reading for anyone, it is a perfect resource for oral interpretation students. The name of the book again is called The Black Poets, and the author is Dudley Randall. I want to thank you as always for tuning in as part of our musical segment. We have a video for you. Until next time, as always, God bless you.
Dibi dibi rek, ah dibi dibi rek, ah dibi dibi rek, dibi dibi rek, ah dibi dibi rek, ah dibi dibi rek. Yangi dagalu wante manoko, bul sopail ñu jaliko. Yangi ni roog pare bu ñu taxawal ndax yow lekkatoo. L'amour porte ton cœur, laisse-nous lui parler de toi. Ndax moo lay majloo dibi dibi rek, dibi dibi rek, dibi dibi rek. kenn xamul lu mu doon